The integration of the two Germanys continued as June turned into July, with the economies of East and West Germany merging officially on the 1st of July as East Germany adopted the Deutschmark and the inter-German border ceased to exist. It was clear that a full unification of the two countries would happen sooner rather than later, and it was just a case of waiting the end of negotiations and an official date. In the meantime, Eastern European riders entered the Tour de France for the first time, with 5 East German and 10 Soviet cyclists taking the Grand Départ at the Futuroscope theme park near Poitiers. On the day of the French Grand Prix, Olaf Ludwig became the first ever East German, and let's face it, probably the last, to win a stage of the Tour, on the 181km, 113-mile 8th stage from Épinal to Besançon, and would go on to win the green jersey for being top on points. Later in the month, Dmitry Konichev became the first Soviet rider to win a stage, in his case the hilly 150km, 93 miles from Lourdes to Pau, and would come in third overall in the young rider classification. The race overall was won by American pre-race favourite 1986 and 89 winner Greg LeMond, with Frenchman Thierry Clavier-Hollat crowned King of the Mountains. Greg LeMond remains the only American ever to have won the Tour de France, 1990 his third and final victory. And the World Cup was wrapping up across the border in Italy. The hosts had a relatively easy ride against the ageing Uruguay side, but the remaining games all went to extra time. Dragan Stojkovic scored twice to send Yugoslavia into the quarters, Ireland won a dramatic penalty shootout against Romania to book their place, and England left it until the last minute of extra time before David Platt broke Belgian hearts. The quarter-finals were another cagey set of games, with only one producing more than one goal. Yugoslavia were down to 10 men after just 30 minutes, but still held Argentina to a 0-0 draw after extra time, and it went to penalties. Stojkovic, the hero of the last round, missed his, but then both Maradona and Troglio missed theirs, and it looked like the champions were going home, until second-choice goalkeeper Sergio Goycochea saved both of the last two to send his side through. Ireland visited the Pope before their match with the hosts in Rome, and acquitted themselves well, going down 1-0 to a 38th-minute strike by Toto Schillaci, and had remarkably progressed all the way to the quarter-finals without winning a game in open play and only scoring 2 goals. A penalty kick, converted by Lothar Matthäus, was the only goal at the San Siro, as the West Germans finally stopped the free-scoring Czechoslovakian side in its tracks, the match refereed coincidentally by one Helmut Kohl of Austria, which must have caused some wry headlines in the German press. The England-Cameroon game, then, could hardly have been more different. Confidence in the England camp and press had been high, bordering on arrogant, going into the game, and England led 1-0 at half-time. But then that man Roger Miller was brought on, and while he didn't score himself, in 4 minutes just after the hour, the Africans scored twice, once from a penalty, to take the lead. They were just 8 minutes from a fairy tale semi-final when England won a penalty, which Lineker scored to take it to extra time, and then another penalty and another conversion by Lineker sent England through. The semi-finals were pretty much identical. Both ended in 1-1 draws, both went to penalties, and both were won 4-3 by the home side after the away side missed their last 2. More heroics from Goycochea in the Argentinian goal, while Ilgner in the German goal saved 1, with Chris Waddle blasting the final one over the bar. During England's semi-final, midfield star Paul Gascoigne picked up a yellow card that would have meant he missed the final. His tears on realising that became one of the images of the tournament. Italy salvaged some pride and the golden boot for local hero Schillaci in the third-place playoff against England, but he left it late. Toto got his 6th of the tournament from an 86-minute penalty. And so the World Cup final on the evening after the French Grand Prix would be a replay of the 1986 final, West Germany against Argentina. It was the West Germans' 3rd consecutive final, having lost to Italy in 1982 and Argentina in 1986, and the 1990 final would prove to be 3rd time lucky, but a pretty dismal spectacle. Argentina were missing many key attacking players, so opted to defend and squash the game. Pedro Monzon became the first player sent off in a World Cup final. Argentina conceded a penalty with 5 minutes to go, which Andy Bremer converted, and then Dazzotti joined Monzon in the sin bin, leaving Argentina with 9 men and the Germans victorious. Meanwhile in France, Adrian Newey had, as rumoured, left the struggling Leighton House team and joined Williams, who debuted a new monoshock suspension system in practice, though they would race with the usual system. Chris Murphy from Lola would replace Newey at Leighton House, and they'd tried some measures to stiffen the chassis a bit. Brabham finally had their new transverse gearbox in practice, but again would race the older system. Elsewhere, Lotus had high hopes for their new McLaren-style 5-tunnel rear diffuser. McLaren themselves had a low-friction evolution of their engine and a slightly redesigned dashboard to aid emergency driver egress, particularly for the lanky Berger, and Gerard Larousse had opened a new factory for his team at Senna near the circuit. Unfortunately, it was looking like this could be the last year of racing at Paul Ricard for a while at least, with a new circuit at Magny-Cours near Berger in central France having signed a 5-year contract, subject to safety tests and homologation due to happen in the weeks following the French Grand Prix. Assuming it passed, the new circuit would also welcome a new team, with Ford announcing that it was partnering with Eddie Jordan to bring his successful F3000 team into the top formula. Alessandro Nannini, meanwhile, would celebrate his 31st birthday, while his sister Gianna was celebrating hitting number 1 in the Italian charts with Un'estate Italiana, the official World Cup song, a duet with Edoardo Bennato written by Giorgio Moroder. The song was later revived in 2021 for Italy's victorious European Championship campaign. Pre-qualifying saw the local Larousse team go back to the top of the table, with Bernard outperforming Suzuki by 1.3 seconds, but behind them, to the delight of the frustrated team, were the AGS cars, Tarquini pre-qualifying for the first time this year and Dalmas for only the second. Olivier Guillard thus missed out by just 0.7 seconds for the first time in 1990, with Moreno uncharacteristically off the pace and only half a second ahead of his beleaguered teammate. Gasho's Subaru engine failed on his first lap, and Giacomelli never even left the pits. The rest took to the track later on Friday, with the Ferraris looking really strong. Mansell took his first pole since Mexico 1987, which was a record 108th pole for the Ferrari team, and his own 13th. Berger, having complained that he didn't really like the circuit, was only 1/10 behind, to relegate Ayrton Senna to the second row, where he would start alongside Prost's Ferrari. Nannini would line up 5th ahead of Patrese. The Leighton House team had found some pace from somewhere, having not qualified in Mexico, and Capelli was 7th, with Gugelmin 10th, the same place he'd started last year before his famous accident. The Aqua Blue pair sandwiched Boutsen in 8th and Piquet in 9th. A French trio of Bernard, Alliot and Alesi, Eric and Jean, both on the anniversary of their first race, were next, then the Japanese pair, then the Brits in the low tie, disappointed after doing well in Mexico. Having less qualifying form than usual were Modena down in 20th and Martini in 23rd, with David Brabham making his second start from 25th and Yannick Dalmas making the grid by just 0.05 over Paolo Barilla, who joined Tarquini and 2 very unhappy Onyx drivers in sitting out the race. So with Prost looking to add a 5th home win to his CV and the practice times looking strong for Ferrari and the temperatures soaring, the cars lined up for the start, with Mansell and Berger preparing to resume hostilities after their ding-dong battle in Mexico. And away they went, with Mansell and Berger tearing off the grid, but Senna bogging down a bit, losing 3rd to Nannini, but regaining it before the first corner, while Mansell held off Berger to retain the lead. Everyone got through okay, so the order was Mansell, Berger, Senna, Nannini, Patrese and Prost, followed by Boutsen, Capelli, Alesi, Alliot and Gugelmin. Somewhere out on the first lap, while the TV director was demonstrating the cameras attached to Boutsen's Williams and the rear-facing ones on the Larousse Lolas, Berger got past Mansell and was already 6 or 7 car lengths ahead by the time they reached the finish line, while Nigel was having to fend off Senna to hang on to second. He didn't hang on to it long, the new Honda engine's power telling down the straight, and soon Nannini was wanting to come through too. It certainly looked like McLaren might have been sandbagging a bit in practice, but there was a lot of race yet to run, with tyres likely to be a major factor as last time in Mexico. The top 6 remained close together, but with no change in positions as they settled in to play the long game, while Boutsen pulled in to retire with coolant spewing from a dud engine, the same lap as Pirro's brakes locked, spinning him into retirement and ending his unhappy weekend. Boutsen's teammate Patrese, meanwhile, was coming under increased pressure from Prost, who was on softer C-compound tyres and really wanted to be making progress before his first of 2 expected stops around 20, but the Renault had just more grunt down the straights and quicker acceleration out of corners, and Ricciardo, never an easy man to pass at the best of times, managed to keep Prost behind. Mansell had a wobble, and Nannini nearly nipped through, while Alesi and Capelli nearly took each other off, but the next development, on lap 20, was when Piquet was the first of the front-runners to make a tyre stop, coming in from 7th. It was a good stop, but everyone was still so bunched up that it dropped him right back to 15th, as Donnelly came in to do the same from 17th. The top 6 were still running very close together meanwhile, and it was starting to look like Ferrari would need to change strategy and put on harder B compounds and try and go through with no more stops, as they'd not been able to use the stickier Cs to gain an early advantage. Local boy Alesi was next in, first of the Pirelli runners, but a problem on the left rear lost him time. Freed from behind Alesi, Capelli started to gain on the Patrese-Prost battle, setting the fastest lap in the process, as Caffey became just the third retirement after 23 laps, with a broken left rear suspension, quickly followed by Jean Alesi having broken his differential during the pit stop. Bernard made his stop, having been holding up Gugelmin for lap after lap, and just like Capelli, the Brazilian was now able to start making a bit of progress. Mansell, meanwhile, seemed to be having trouble keeping his car on the black bit several times, just managing to keep it somehow ahead of Nannini. Prost was the first of the red cars in, though, on lap 27, boiling out of the pits after a sub-8 second stop. While that was happening, Senna passed Berger for the lead, and soon the Austrian was under attack from Mansell, with Nannini as ever in close attendance. Berger and Nannini, though, both peeled in together for their stops the next lap. A poor McLaren stop saw Berger stationary nearly 13 seconds, losing first gear and dropping down to 11th. So now Senna led Mansell, with Patrese third and Capelli fourth, all four still running close together. Capelli was really putting pressure on Patrese, who was driving his 199th Grand Prix, as Senna came in from the lead for his stop on lap 30. Left rear trouble again meant a catastrophic stop for Senna, 16.62 seconds stationary, dropping him back to 8th, just ahead of Berger, who'd caught up a bit since his own stop. So Mansell led Patrese and Capelli, and none of them had yet stopped, until Mansell came in next time round for a much better stop than Senna's, which left Patrese in the lead, for all of about half a lap before Capelli muscled his way past to lead a Grand Prix for the first time on lap 32. With Gugelmin in the other Leighton house up to third and Prost fourth and charging. Patrese made a dreadful stop, missed by the cameras, the left front the problem this time, dropping him to 11th, so as the race approached half distance, somehow it was a Leighton house 1-2, though Prost was fast approaching and would take the lead when they made their stops. Behind Prost was Nannini 4th, Mansell 5th, Senna 6th, Piquet 7th and Berger 8th. Prost caught up to Gugelmin just as the Brazilian caught up to De Cesaris' De Lara on the stroke of half-distance, with Capelli still about 8 seconds up the road in the lead. But before Prost could get past Gugelmin, Nannini caught up and started nibbling at the back of the Ferrari, forcing him to defend instead for a little while. Further back, the two Larousse Lolas were providing some excellent in-car camera action as they duelled with each other in the midfield, but the interest was firmly up front, as the three-way fight over second continued, all three leaving the uncharacteristically anonymous Mansell, Senna, Piquet and Berger behind. It was starting to become obvious that the Leighton House team were actually going to try and run through without stopping, so Prost was beginning to get a bit frustrated stuck behind Gugelmin. Finally, on lap 54 at the end of the start-finish straight, Prost elbowed his way through, with Nannini unsuccessfully trying to follow as well. So, with about a third of the race to go, Prost started to chase down Capelli. The Italian's tyres were starting to go off a bit, and he was making a meal of lapping Martin Donnelly, while Prost ate up the distance between them. Gugelmin was out with a cracked fuel line shortly after losing the place to Prost, pulling over just past the pit entrance. There was just a quarter race distance to go now, and Capelli still led, but with his mirrors now full of Ferrari. That seemed to inspire him, putting up another fastest lap on lap 62, and if the French audience had seen Prost would simply cruise by for another home win, it looked like they might be disappointed. The pair lapped the Lolas, who got some good shots of them coming past. Mansell made a stop on lap 61, dropping back to 8th and setting about Berger in 7th, taking the fastest lap off Capelli on lap 64, while Gugelmin talked to ESPN and talked up his teammates' chances.
We just managed to balance the car really well, and we're running very soft tires, and that helped, and we didn't have to change. But the problem is the oil light came on about 10 laps before I blow up, and basically I was just waiting to go and just went in front of the pits, unfortunately.
Let me ask you, do you think that your teammate has enough tire, a good enough tire wear to stay out there, or will he have to come in? Will he have to surrender his lead?
No way, he'll do the whole distance. We both plan to balance the car really well. We're on the softest tire, and our car is working really well. I just hope his engine lasts.
As in Mexico, there hadn't been many retirements, just 7 so far in fact, as the race entered its closing stages, so there was still plenty of traffic on the circuit to provide intrigue to Prost's pursuit of Capelli. By now, the two were nose to tail, with the super slippery aerodynamics of the Leighton house cancelling out the Ferrari's power advantage and actually drawing away with 10 laps to go, while Nannini had dropped off and was about 7 seconds behind them with Senna on his tail. The furious pace wasn't letting up behind either, with Mansell and Berger going at it hammer and tongs over 6th and Patrese ready to pick up the pieces. His patience was rewarded as he took over 7th when Mansell's engine grenaded itself with 8 laps to go. Mansell really not a happy bunny at Ferrari these days. The laps ticked down with Prost apparently still unable to make any impression on Capelli. 6 to go. 5 to go. Nannini's electrics gave up, robbing the Italian of a birthday podium as Prost lunged, Capelli parried and stayed in the lead. 4 laps to go, Senna up to 3rd and bearing down on Prost, Piquet 4th, Berger 5th and Patrese 6th. 3 laps to go, and this time he made it. To a roar from the crowd, Prost dived inside Capelli at the double right-hander. Capelli, his fuel pressure dropping rapidly, let him go and hung grimly on to 2nd place. Alain Prost came in to take his 5th French Grand Prix win, his 42nd overall, and Ferrari's landmark 100th Grand Prix win. Ivan Capelli spluttered across the line with Senna closing rapidly, but not quite rapidly enough. The Leighton House team's first points finish since the opening race of 1989. Piquet, Berger and Patrese held their points finishes, with the LaRousse Lolas finishing well, if frustratedly, just outside the points, with 18 classified finishers, and Andrea de Cesaris, 15th across the line, disqualified after scrutineering for an underweight car. So, Prost closed to within 3 points of Senna, with 3 wins apiece, with Ayrton putting a positive spin on a fairly undistinguished race afterwards, saying that, with the best 11 rule, that 3rd place could end up being vital too. 3 cracking races in a row, a wide-open championship and plenty to look forward to going into the next race at Silverstone in just 7 days' time. After yet another fruitless weekend, and amid swirling rumours of his departure, Nigel Mansell would be very keen to get his 1990 season back on track in front of his adoring fans.
Beginning of the race for overtake other cars in front of me because my V8, the Judd, wasn't enough quicker to overtake people. So I have to wait for the others to stop because I knew that everybody there was stopped for tires. So I actually tried to save tires and brakes and just to concentrate to stay in the line and not to actually build up the temperature in the tires. Then at the end, unfortunately, when I was in front of Prost, I had some problem with the oil lights of the engine, and so in the last 2 laps the engine started to have problems, and I'm lucky to finish 2nd.